Imagine the global economy as a phone with one dominant operating system. It's fast, trusted, and almost every app is built for it. That's the US-led financial order. Now picture a second OS quietly booting up in the background. It doesn't have to replace everything. It just needs to run a few tasks cheaper, faster, or with fewer rules. If enough users switch for those tasks, the way money moves, ships sail, and prices are set begins to change. That second system is the BRICS project. The sharper question isn't will they topple the West, but can they create enough credible options to force the system to share space? BRICS began as an acronym: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and evolved into a coalition with three ambitions: finance infrastructure on friendlier terms, reduce automatic dollar dependence, and gain more say in writing the rules. The circle has widened through partnerships with commodity powers and trade hubs. On paper, they represent a vast share of people, growth, and resources. But size alone isn't power. Power is systems. The rails money runs on, the markets where contracts are enforced and prices discovered, and the materials that give countries leverage at the negotiating table. Start with money. The dollar's advantage isn't the paper, it's the plumbing: deep capital markets, liquid treasury bonds, predictable courts, and trust built over decades. That combination gives businesses speed and safety. BRICS governments are chipping at the edges by settling more trade in local currencies, expanding their development bank to fund projects without Western conditionality, and testing new pipes, from central bank swaps to cross-border digital pilots, that can move value when legacy routes are blocked or politically sensitive. But money is a promise, and promises need institutions. A currency that aspires to global use needs open capital accounts, thick bond markets, and stability that survives elections and crises. Some BRICS economies maintain capital controls. Others face sanctions or governance concerns. Without markets deep enough for trillion-dollar investors to enter and exit without swinging prices, the dollar's network effects endure. That doesn't make alternatives pointless. It defines the playing field. You won't dethrone the dollar soon, but you can build targeted lanes, energy deals, regional trade corridors, crisis time swaps that reduce the West's automatic leverage when it matters. Now look at markets, where prices and power are decided. Western hubs still dominate commodity benchmarks like Brent and WTI, maritime insurance, and the legal data standards that make contracts enforceable across borders. Control the benchmark and you influence the spread. Control the insurer and you decide which cargo sails. Control the court and your rules travel with the goods. The BRICS playbook is pragmatic. Build alternative ports and corridors. List more commodities on exchanges in Asia, the Middle East, and Africa, and expand parallel insurers and shippers willing to handle deals legacy firms avoid. This creates resilience. When one door closes, another opens. The trade-off is a risk premium that only falls when volume and trust scale up. Materials are the clearest source of leverage. Many BRICS and aligned partners sit on what an industrial world can't live without: hydrocarbons that power grids, fertilizers that feed billions, and critical minerals for batteries, electronics, and renewable infrastructure. Leverage rarely looks like a showy embargo. It looks like harder bargaining, longer contracts, discounts tied to settlement terms, and joint ventures that move countries up the value chain from mining to refining to manufacturing. The constraint is technological. High-end equipment, precision software, and key semiconductor tools still cluster in the West and allied economies. Owning ore isn't the same as owning margin, so the long game is upgrading capacity at home and capturing more value per ton shipped. Politics complicates everything. Diversity is a strength and a friction point. Members compete for export markets, some have border disputes, and priorities diverge between commodity sellers and manufacturing importers. This isn't a bloc with one treasury and a single foreign policy. It's a coalition that tightens when interests align and loosens when they don't. Even so, loose coordination can shift gravity. If energy exporters, big manufacturers, and fast-growing consumer markets agree on a few practical rules, like more local currency settlement for specific commodities, that's enough to nudge banks, insurers, and shippers to adapt. You can already see early signs. When sanctions shut familiar buyers, cargoes don't vanish. They reroute with new discounts, different insurers, and alternative paperwork. Crude sold at a markdown can be refined elsewhere and re-exported as products that re-enter global markets under new terms. Payment experiments that once felt niche are clearing meaningful volumes along regional regional corridors. None of this replaces SWIFT or New York clearing, but each successful workaround normalizes the idea that big transactions don't always need to pass through the same gates. Norms harden with use, and repetition builds credibility. So can BRICS really challenge the West? Not with a cinematic coup. The dollar's moat, trust, depth, predictability won't vanish, but challenge doesn't require replacement. It requires reliable alternatives where it counts. If BRICS economies keep building rails for money, markets, and materials that work on time, at scale, and under stress, they will push the world toward a polycentric system. The old OS remains the default for many tasks, while BRICS and partners run serious plugins for energy deals, infrastructure finance, and regional payments. For businesses, that means more corridors and more hedging decisions. For policymakers, influence depends less on speeches and more on delivering value. Better financing terms, faster approvals, cleaner rules, and projects that actually get built. The throne probably doesn't change hands. The ecosystem just gets denser. Module by module, corridor by corridor, contract by contract, a second operating system is coming online. And if it keeps working when things get messy, the West will have to share the stage.